Hey, welcome to my podcast where I discuss the origins of all sorts of things. I'm your host, Danny Payne, and this is On the Origin of Everything. Today I'm talking about roller coasters. There are over 2,400 roller coasters throughout the world. In the United States, California has the most, and 3 states don't have any. Delaware, Rhode Island, and Hawaii don't have any roller coasters. My initial guess was that roller coasters came about around the same time amusement parks became a thing, so, I don't know, early 1900s? Well, it turns out the roller coaster has a 400-year-old history, and it starts in Russia. In the 1600s, a St. Petersburg showman built the Russian Mountains, originally the Flying Mountains, but they later came to be known as the Russian Mountains. They were wooden slides covered in ice, and people would slide down them going 50 miles an hour. This isn't a roller coaster at all, just a giant, dangerous ice slide. But it inspired Russian Empress Catherine the Great to commission the construction of something similar in the mid to late 1700s. There were actually 2 entertainment pavilions that she commissioned, one in Tsarsky Selo and one in Ozanienbaum. Both are near St. Petersburg. She loved the ice slides so much that she wanted to have something like them for summer too. These were to be the summer version of the Russian mountain ice slides. These 2 entertainment pavilions had carriages that rolled down slopes on grooved tracks. And for my money, these were the first roller coasters. They called them riding mountains, always with the mountains. I guess because these tracks look like mountain slopes. But the term Russian mountains is what they called these types of rolling carts on slopes. No one was calling them roller coasters yet, of course. The year I kept seeing was 1784 for these rolling carts, making the roller coaster 241 years old. In the early 1800s, the French got into the game. This was in and around Paris. Their version of the Russian mountains, or Les Montagnes Russes, had small wheels, and some historians credit this as the first roller coaster for that reason. These Russian mountains were very steep, so steep that people were getting hurt on them all the time, but no one seemed to care. In fact, the frequent accidents actually increased the ride's popularity. It was probably one of those, we gotta try this, like a challenge accepted type of thing. It's interesting that the roller coaster concept escalated so quickly. Right out of the gate, it was fast and dangerous. I suppose danger, or the perception of danger, is fundamental here. We know that the appeal of a roller coaster is adrenaline, but there is no adrenaline rush without fear, and no fear without danger. Moving on to the year 1817, still in Paris, the aerial walks opened. Riders would start at the top of a tall structure and then sit on a bench in a wheeled cart that was locked to the tracks and guided by guardrails all the way down a 600-foot track going 40 miles an hour. There were 2 tracks, and attendants would push the riders all the way back to the top, encouraging re-rides, the same concept and convenience of a ski lift. That was the main idea. A lot of websites call this the birth of the roller coaster, but I think Catherine the Great did it first in Russia. A carriage rolling on grooved tracks for amusement? That's good enough for me. When you get a chance, look up aerial walks in Paris 1817. They were impressive. These rides weren't for babies. They were legit. And it was some rich people stuff for sure. You'll see what I mean. The popularity of these types of amusement rides cooled off for a period in Europe. But in the New World, specifically in Summit Hill, Pennsylvania in 1873, a coal mine was converted to a scenic passenger ride attraction. It was called the Mauch Chunk Switchback Railway. A ridiculous name, Mauch Chunk, but that was the name of the mine that closed and was converted to a thrill ride. It came to be known as Gravity Road, as the tracks took passengers 8.7 miles downhill going 60 miles an hour. Sounds amazing. I would totally do this. The Mauch Chunk attraction was such a hit that many copycat operations started sprouting up. In Haverhill, Massachusetts in 1887, an indoor one was built above an ice skating rink. It was literally built above the rink, like a 2-in-1 attraction. Stephen Jackman and Byron Floyd invented what they called a sliding hill and toboggan, in which hundreds of wheels were located on the tracks and the cars tobogganed the entire run. The passengers literally coasted on rollers. Many people point to this as the origin of the term roller coaster. There's another competing theory that the gravity rides that used a conveyor system with large rollers beneath the belt is where roller coaster came from, but I don't think so. I'm team Sliding Hill and Toboggan, 1887, Haverhill, Massachusetts. and you can put that on a shirt and be the biggest nerd in the world. Sadly, this amazing ride that coined the term roller coaster, in my book, only lasted a few years. It declined in popularity due to accidents, and I'm gonna read what the Haverhill Daily Bulletin printed in December of 1888, a little over a year after it opened. A roller toboggan is a bad thing to fool in. Many accidents have been recorded heretofore, but yesterday occurred one which bid fair to prove a serious one. A young man, while being carried swiftly around the rink, when just opposite the skate room door, attempted to stand up in the car and step from one seat to the other. The car was going with such force that he was flung headlong from the seat and was hurled violently into the skate room, where he landed on the floor. Had the skate room door been closed, instant death might have occurred. A young man standing at the door narrowly escaped injury by being hit by the flying youth. How did I do, Bostonians? Probably not very good. But this is exactly what I imagined. Just pure chaos with these early rides. People just sitting on benches like they're at the park. No seat belts, nothing to secure them, going 50 miles an hour, no height restrictions, no nothing. Just wild. Now, in contrast to these sketchy rides, Lamarcus Thompson at Coney Island invented a switchback railway in 1884 that was more of a viewing tour. It only went 6 miles an hour. But it didn't need to go fast because that wasn't the point. This ride was different because instead of facing forward, passengers sat facing outward to enjoy the beautiful scenery. This was a whole new concept. A little history on Coney Island. It got its first hotel in 1829, and by the time the Civil War was over in 1865, the area was an established resort, with theaters, shops, restaurants, and the first hot dog was said to have been invented there in 1867, a precursor to one of the most famous hot dog companies in America, Nathan's. Coney Island was kind of like a laboratory for inventing new rides in the late 1800s. The oldest coaster still operating in Coney Island is the famous Cyclone, built in 1927, coming up on 100 years. So like I was saying, Lamarcus Thompson created the slow-moving switchback railway on Coney Island in 1884, then went to work on the scenic railway in the Atlantic City Boardwalk in 1887. This soon became the most well-known amusement device in the world, and the true precursor of today's theme park rides, with artificial scenery, including biblical scenes, and the use of electric lights. This coaster combined the appearance of danger and safety. It operated on gears and steel, very industrial revolution. I read somewhere that this ride was a precursor to Space Mountain and other 20th century theme park rides. The Cyclone in Coney Island is the oldest in that park, but the oldest roller coaster still in operation in the world is the Leap the Dips in Lakemont Park in Altoona, Pennsylvania, built in 1902. This 123-year-old coaster has wheels underneath the cart that roll on wooden parallel planks, and wheels on the sides of the cart that roll on a wooden bumper along the inner edge of the track to keep it from derailing on the turns. This is known as a side friction roller coaster. Let's not forget the looping roller coaster. The first attempt at this was back in 1846 in Paris, but it was a flop. The loop was only 13 feet in diameter and it was uncomfortable to ride. It was inspired by a toy that used centrifugal force to keep a ball rolling on a looped track without falling off. The world would not see another looping ride until 1895 at Paul Boyton's Sea Lion Park in Coney Island. This was a 25-foot loop called the Flip Flap Railway that was also uncomfortable and dangerous to ride, but it did see more success than that dinky 13-foot one in Paris. It only lasted a few years though. Edward Prescott built the Loop on Coney Island in 1901. It had a better design than the Flip Flap, but it was still a low seating capacity ride which played into its demise. It too had a short lifespan. It wasn't until 1976 that the first successful vertical loop roller coaster was achieved, the Great American Revolution ride at Six Flags Magic Mountain. The heyday of roller coasters was the 1920s for sure, when there were over 1,500 coasters across the US. They were the biggest attraction at every amusement park, and they still are today. To sum it up, the history of the roller coaster began in Russia in the 1600s, which led us on a journey of many, many firsts, introducing new designs, new technology, learning through trial and error, and often injury, to give the world what it didn't even know it craved, G-forces. Stick around for part 2 right after this. This show is brought to you by nothing. If you'd like to help keep ads off this show, click the Patreon link in the show notes to donate, or visit patreon.com/ontheoriginofeverything. Another way you can support this show is by giving it a 5-star rating and review, or by following it or sharing it. Let's build a community of people that are curious and always learning. Now, back to the show. Part 2 of this episode is on cotton candy. When I pitched this topic to Jez, I hadn't done any research on it yet, and I was just speculating like, cotton candy had to have come after electricity and after the Industrial Revolution, right? It can't be very old. What do you think? And she goes, I have no idea. But I bet it was St. Louis World's Fair 1904. She was absolutely right. And that's why she handles most of the research on this podcast. So, the origin of cotton candy. In the late 1800s in Nashville, Tennessee, a man named John C. Wharton, a candy maker, makes sense, and his pal, William Morton, a dentist, ironically, were also inventors together. And they came up with a machine that would heat up sugar in a spinning bowl, creating light strands of sugar. They called it fairy floss. I think Australians still call it that. They patented their candy machine in 1897, then sold it to the Electric Candy Machine Company, who debuted the invention and fairy floss at the 1904 World's Fair in St. Louis, Missouri, just like Jez said without even looking it up. They sold the fairy floss in little wooden boxes with illustrations of the St. Louis World's Fair, and man, I would love to find one of those. They sold each box for 25 cents, which was quite a bit. The ticket to get into the fair was 50 cents, so a little box of sugar was half the price to get in. 25 cents in 1904 is like $9 today, and they sold almost 70,000 boxes, so they made about $600,000 in today's money. Their fairy floss machine would win the award, Most Novel Device in the Way of Electrical Machinery. Now, the person credited for popularizing the term cotton candy was a man in New Orleans named Joseph Lascaux, a dentist. Again, another dentist. In 1921, he invented his own machine and marketed his little sugar clouds as cotton candy, and the name stuck. That's all for today. I hope you enjoyed learning about roller coasters and cotton candy. Don't forget to support the show any way you can. To suggest future topics, send an email to info@ontheoriginpod.com. And until next time, so long. Research, music, and production was all done by Jeziree Wilson. This podcast is listener-supported, owned and operated by Jez and myself under the On the Origin of Everything LLC in the United States. We can be reached via email at info@ontheoriginpod.com.